Hear me in the back? All right, guys, we actually have quite a bit of information to go over, so we're going to get started just a little bit early.
Right.
So welcome everyone to the Global Azure Bootcamp. My name is Jeff Stagg. I'm a senior collaborations and cloud architect at Phidiax. And if you guys need any extra information or anything, my email address is jeffstagg@phidiax.com. Feel free to shoot me an email with any questions you may have. If we don't get to everybody's questions or anything, or if you get stuck doing any of this stuff, just give me a shout. The source for the presentation, so on my GitHub account, I've got a repository, it's called Library. That includes the slide deck, all the images, includes all the source code and everything that we'll go over, and the README on that. That repository has information as far as how to run the project, how to get it set up, and we'll get you guys going there. So today we're going to be covering how to log into your applications with Azure B2C. We're going to go over what OpenID Connect is, kind of how that interacts with OAuth. We're going to go over Azure B2C, the application that is built to kind of go along and demonstrate connectivity with Azure B2C, and how to set up authentication and authorization inside your applications. So let's jump right in. OpenID Connect is technology built on top of OAuth. It's used for authentication in your applications. And essentially what happens is you've got a user, and your user wants to get access to a protected resource. So your protected resource could be an API that's sending you information back. It could be an image store or anything like that that you're wanting to secure. And the client app is just in this instance, is a website that wants to get access to those resources. So if I want to log into example.com, and example.com wants access to my Facebook information, there has to be connectivity for example.com to be able to talk to that and get your resources. So we bring in what we call an authorization server. And in this instance, there's this handshake that goes along. So as a user, I want to go to my client application. Client application is going to try to get access to this protected resource. So what it needs to do is it needs to forward the user to an authorization server and log in. So when the user goes to the authorization server, in this case Azure, they're going to be presented with a registration and login page. And once that user is authenticated and logged in, it's going to send some tokens back. So the tokens are going to include, one's an ID token. It includes basically who you are. The next is an access token. And that token says what you can do. So those tokens are going to be sent back to your browser through the client application. And the client application is going to have to send those tokens along to the protected resource to be able to get your information. So in this case, with the web API, we can hit the web API all we want, going straight from the client application, but without that key or without that token, it's going to send a 401 back. It's not going to give you information, which is good. It's what we want. So where Azure fits into this, Azure B2C is identity and access management. So it's basically your user store, as far as your users, their profiles, and their passwords, everything, and kind of an idea of what they can access through what we call scopes. Scopes are things like I want to read from this API, and I want to be able to write to it. So in my request, I send this scope along saying that I want to read and I want to write. And then if the application lets you get access with that scope, it'll send that information back. This will all become more and more clear as we go through the example applications as well. So with Azure B2C, it's of course built on top of Azure AD. So your existing Azure AD directory will have all your users kind of already stored and all their passwords. So that part's already kind of set up and good to go for you. It can provide sign up and login pages for you by default. You can use the pretty ones that come from Microsoft, or you can upload your own so that you can kind of have control of your branding and everything for registration and login. It uses OpenID Connect or SAML. It uses several different technologies there to send tokens back and forth. And it's super easy to configure multi-factor authentication. So being able to get an access code sent to your phone and everything to make sure that it's actually you who's logging into your device. Pricing, we're just going to kind of breeze over. The pricing details you can find online at azure.com for just the details of it. Essentially, there's a fee for however many users you have, however many authentications they're making every month, and whether or not they're using MFA. So that's all kind of detailed. Each one has different levels of charges and tiers. So you can go on there, and of course, you can always go to the default pricing calculator and enter how many users you would have, how many authentications they'd be making a month, things like that to get an idea of what it would cost. Next, we have our library application. So the library app is just something that I built. It's got 3 main parts to it. It's got an API built on .NET Core 2. That API has 2 endpoints. It's got a public endpoint that's just an open endpoint that allows anonymous calls to it. The next one is a secured endpoint. So the public one, we're sending books back and forth. Public are the books that you kind of want people knowing that you read, some of the good classics. And the private ones are more just books that you kind of don't want to be seen reading in public. It's kind of just your private stash there. And there's a middleware inside of that API that allows this authentication to happen. So we're going to be using, it's called JOT tokens, JSON Web Tokens. That's the style of authentication we're going to be using to go along with that. The front end application is an Angular app. It's going to authenticate the user through B2C, and then it's going to be sending those tokens that it gets to the API to authenticate the user authorized. And of course, Azure B2C is going to be set up for our user store, and that's going to handle all of our registration and login and logout. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to set up an Azure B2C instance. So we're going to create a new tenant, link it to a subscription, add the application, and kind of go through the process there. Now, creating the tenant actually takes a few minutes to do, so I went ahead and created one for this demo. And I went ahead and linked it to the subscription that I have. I set up a free subscription for this, so if you wanted to follow along or anything through the slides, again, you can grab the code from the repository, and we've got screenshots and everything of what to do there. All right, so let's dive right in. So if we just come to home, you can see I've created this B2C tenant. We just called it Live Azure Bootcamp B2C demo. And it's our tenant. And you see our resource. Resource. All right, so essentially what we're wanting to do is we've created this B2C resource. Now we need to add an application that's going to be able to access it. Be able to work. So let's come into applications. So there's one here. So we're going to name it Live Azure. We are going to include an API. We're going to allow implicit flow. And so our reply URL, that's going to be our Angular application that's actually going and authenticating and then being returned to grab that token. So we're going to use the default port 4200 Angular bootstrap, and we're going to give it an actual URI. For our app.rd URI, this is optional. I usually throw it in here. Demo API. Great, so we've got our application, Live Azure B2C demo. It's got an application ID. And you can see we've got a bit of basic information that we have here set up. Next thing we want to get going here is our sign up and sign in policies. All right, so what we need to do is we need to allow applications access to our actual tenant. So we do that by assigning sign up and sign in policies. And one kind of quick gotcha that you get, you actually have to have a sign up and sign in policy and individual sign up policy, individual sign in policy. Let's do sign in. Identity providers, we want to have email sign up. And your sign up attributes, these are things that you're going to be asking for from your user. And a lot of these, like email address, given name, surname, which we'll be using today, these are kind of some common policies that go along with OAuth. So if you used OAuth in the past, like Google sign in or sign in via Twitter or anything like that, some of these are what familiar to as far as surname, given name. These are all just defaults inside of the structure there. But essentially, it's our first name, last name, just address. Application claims, these are what applications can actually ask for access to. So we want the application to be able to ask for the email address, again, our given name and surname. We're not going to turn on multi-factor authentication. If you wanted to, though, you just come to here, and it's as easy as clicking on it. And then that'll come to it. I'm going to do that today. And same with page customization. This is where you can come in and you can actually say, like, this sign up and sign in page, I want to provide my home. So you would give it a URL to say where your sign in page is located. And that's where your application would be going and hosting all of the HTML and everything, all of your branding for your sign up and sign in. All right, so we're going to create our policy. And you can see it prepended the policy with B2C_1 underscore sign up sign in. This is going to become important because we're going to need to know this name. Right. So again, like I said, you have to have a sign up / sign in. We also have to have a specific sign up and a specific sign in. So let's get them built. Also remember, anytime you are going and editing these, it is important to click OK, because if you don't, it actually will not save it. Pretty sure that.
Can you go over the difference between attributes and claims again?
For sure. So attributes, as far as, so we have a few of these. So these policies are essentially saying that the application can come up and sign up and sign in. That the things that we're giving access to, like email address and surname and given name. So these are claims. When you have a token to say that I am who I say I am, a driver's license would be a good example of a token. Right? So it's got my information in the form of claims. So that token is claiming that my first name is Jeff, and it's claiming that my last name is Stagg. So it's kind of the same with your tokens that are being passed across through HTTP. Those claims are saying that this token is claiming that the person's given name is Jeff, claiming that the surname is last. So does that clear that up?
So claims is what the app is sending out, and attributes is what it's sending.
So the claims itself belong to the token. So and if you guys couldn't hear, so I was asking, like, what are claims? So if I'm going to make a request to a server, and that request should be secured, I'm going to be sending a token along with it. Right? Now that token has what we call claims, and that token is claiming that my first name is Jeff and last name is Stagg. It's just kind of when a token has these items, they have things like claims, where it's got scopes and things like that. And scopes are loosely defined. Claims are defined as this is basically an attribute of the person that the token is claiming.
So what's an example of a scope versus claim?
So a scope goes along with a request to say what you're requesting access for. So if I send a token and I'm wanting access to read an API, I'm going to send a scope of API.read, for example. So that's what I'm wanting the request to do. And that's the scope of that claim, is to get access to reading the API. A claim in that token is it belongs more to the actual token and the person sending the token. So it's saying that this token is claiming that the first name is Jeff and claiming that the last name is Stagg, versus I want this information. So we have our sign in, we've got our sign up policy, both of them. All right. Go. Next, we want to come in and add our scopes. So we come into our application. So this application that we're wanting to go and gain access to, we're going to have to, essentially in B2C, you have to set up the scopes that it's allowed to request. So it's basically stopping someone from, if I'm hosting an API and I'm allowing people to retrieve and send images to it, then Joe Schmo application over here can just come in and say that, hey, I want access to be able to read and to write to this person's photo storage. Now, what we're doing here is when we're setting up the middleware, we can actually say that this application can get access to read, but not to write to this API. So that's what we're going to do here. We're going to set up a scope to say that this application can read from our API. So right now, this scope is available inside of our application in Tenant, but the API does not have access to it. So we're going to come into API access. So what we're doing is we're saying that this live Azure B2C demo, we want to give it permission to demo.read and to act on behalf of the user. So that should be everything we need to do as far as setting up Azure B2C. We've got our application, we've got our URL. Should be good to go. Next, what we want to do. Trying to show my slide. So again, all these are screenshotted. If you wanted to go and grab the repository, this is all available to you as well. Kind of step by step. So the next part we want to do is set up our authorization. So again, there's two sides of that. We want to set up the API to say that we're going to be handling all of our authorization through a JWT and through the URL that we have our Azure B2C instance set up on. We also want to add the authorized header to any controllers that we're wanting to secure. Inside of the Angular client, we're going to be using a plugin called the Angular OAuth OIDC client. We're going to be editing our app module and we're going to be editing our component to kind of go and set up that plugin. So let's get right to it. So let's go ahead and take care of our API first. So the actual library API itself, it's got a very simple model. It's got a book, which it's got a book which has a title and an author. It has a controller to be able to send a list of public books and a list of private books. These are, again, this endpoint is all public, so it's allowing any type of anonymous request. Anything can hit this. And we have our secure endpoint set up through this authorize header. Now, we set up our middleware to make this authorize header work by coming into startup, and we're using the add authentication method. So we come in, we say that we want to authenticate using JWT, and we come in and add a bearer. So this is the need of the application on this side. So we're setting up our policy URI, and something fun about if you've ever gone and set up JWT bearers before for an application to secure it, a lot of times you don't really have to use this metadata address. We're using it because Azure B2C kind of needs it. It's the only way you can kind of get that part to work. Otherwise, default URLs do not go through properly, so you kind of want to set up the URL manually. So what we're doing is essentially log in Microsoft Online, the name of our actual tenant, and at the end here, it's asking for what OpenID configuration policy. So we're going to come into as part of the setup, and give it URL. And we want our policy name. We want to give it the sign-up policy. As you can see, the actual policy name is the exact same one that we had in there, B2C_1 sign-up. Next, we need to plug in our audience, our application ID. And we're going to go ahead and run this. So right now, if you kind of look ahead through the startup, you saw I went ahead and put Swagger on here so that we can just get a look at our API. So again, from our model, we've got our book. It's got a title and an author. If you come to the public point, we haven't authenticated anywhere. It's just /public, and you can see that we're getting our JSON back that we expect. So you get a 200, get our data back. And if we come to private, again, since we are not authenticated, execute, we get a 401 unauthorized, which is what we'd expect. So let's come in and edit our JavaScript application. So we come into our app module. We've already included our plugin, and we just have a bit of setup information down here. Most of this kind of goes along with what your application is going to be doing as far as like where it's going to be talking to authenticate a user. The parts that we're concerned with today are this line under load config. the end here, it should still have the same policy name. Sign up, sign in. If you remember the scope that we entered earlier, let me show you where that's at. We come into our scopes to see that this is kind of small. And this, that's going to get too long to read. So essentially, this is the full. You can kind of see the full URL there. Just the full URL / demo API / whatever the scope is. The one that we're concerned with is this demo.read. That's the one that we're missing. Demo.read, so let's just put in the URL there. And last, we need our application ID. If we come into our app component, we have a few basic methods. The authorize, so in our plugin, the authorize function, it does both sign up and sign in for you. It kind of handles both of those. It just goes under the same function call. So we have a sign up function, which we call the plugin's authorized function. Sign out just calls log off. When we close the application itself, it shuts down the communication with Azure B2C, so it's going to figure all that out for us. It's got two API calls. You see get public books. It's going to call our API public endpoint. And you can see it's just a standard call. It doesn't really do anything special to make that call because it's an insecure endpoint. The get private books call, though, what this is going to do is it's going to grab the token that will be established through the plugin. It's going to go and log us in. It's going to bring us back to the application, and it's going to grab the token from that response. This token is going to be put into a header called the authorization header. So part of OAuth, the way that it sends information, it goes through this particular header called authorize, and it sends what we call a bearer token. The token is basically a JWT, a JSON web token. And so that's it's all just an encrypted string so that we can send information about who gave us the token, whether it has the proper authority to access whatever endpoints you're wanting to, those kind of things, whatever scopes we're sending. So this is going to append that header. It's going to make the call, and hopefully it's going to be setting private books as the response. If not, we're going to get an error in the console. Do there, so let's give it a shot. Are you guys excited? I'm excited. Well, I think what I'm going to try to do is I'm going to try to switch back and forth a little bit between this fancy schmancy chart that I built, kind of show what the process is doing. Wow. Okay. All right, so we want to go to the library app. This is localhost 4200. And let's open up our So if we call get public books, again, that's a public endpoint. We are failing. know it's only giving an error because we're doing it.
I see for phone number is like 5,000.
Yeah, you have 5,000, not 5,001.
Oh, good call. There we go. So we have our list of public books. We don't mind people knowing that we've read. And what we call get private books, so we're getting an error back, we get our 401. So you can see in our headers, there's have our authenticate there with an empty string next to it. Empty string. So of course, since the middleware did not get a valid bearer token, it's going to return a 401. So what we're going to have to do is we're going to come click sign up and sign in. This is going to send us again. So we're on login.microsoftonline.com. We're at our clicking point there. We're going to sign up. Have a user chat.
What is your choice of tools in the browser to use posting and so forth?
So we had asked what kind of tools do we use to get requests, to send requests for post and get. We can use Postman. When you're using Postman to send requests and you need to send a token with it, you actually have to go and kind of manipulate the headers yourself. So you have to go and perform a login, grab the bearer token, and kind of insert that into it yourself. This one we're actually going to keep nice and easy so that we can just send the information right along.
And what tool are you using now?
So right now I'm just using the browser. We're going through an Angular application, and this has we're using the plugin, and that's sending us to microsoftonline.com to go and log in, and it's going to be sending that information back through the browser through the response with our tokens in it. So that was part of what we were asking.
This is just Google's dev tools, right?
Oh, on the right, yes. This is just Google Chrome, and this is just their dev tools. So we want to sign up with an email address. We use Jeff Stagg at ProtonMail, and this is kind of included with you for free. You can send a verification code, and it gives you a response to anything. Let's go to ProtonMail. Doesn't always send it instantly. Okay. Yeah, so unfortunately we have to have this verification code to continue. Let's go ahead and set up the rest of it while we wait. So if you saw that kind of pop up, you get a lot of the other things for free as well, such as password validation, things like that, making sure that you have a secure password. Surname again is the common name for last name. Yay, we've got email. All right, so we've got our verification code.
Yeah, is that 01? Yeah, okay. You want. But verify. That's mine.
All right, so what this has done, it has gone in and created my user, and it has logged in for me, and it sends me back to, I don't know if you caught it when it first started coming through, but it sends me back to redirect.html, and inside of the URL, it's got a query string for what your ID token is, what your access token is, things like that, which we will look at in just a second, but first we need to show you that when we make our call to get private books now, it's actually got a code stored in our private call. Now has this authorization header, the bearer, and then our actual token at the end of it. So as you can see, it's got our private books now that we had secured. So books that no one needs to know that we read. We still have our public books. Still going good. So if we come to look at what information was sent back and forth, we get to this. So inside of our console, we have the code just logging the tokens that we get to the console. So we have two tokens here. It looks like they're the same, but they just start with the same and different signatures at the end to know which way is which. So first we're going to look at our ID token. We can kind of see what information is stored in it. We come to jwt.io. It's this tool put out by Auth0. They have set up decoding these tokens, so you can kind of troubleshoot and see what you got. So the payload data, you can see who the issuer was, who the subscribers are, see the email addresses, first name, last name, kind of the basics that we were asking for. It's got our, usually the TFP is saying like what the policy is that we're going to sign into. Now, that's just saying who we are. The access token says what we're allowed to request. We're saying here, that's this guy. And here, you can see it's got most of the same information, but the one that we're mostly concerned with here is the scope. So again, we've got demo.read. So basically, this is the actual access token. It's sending the request to the protected resource, to our API. It's sending along this token as an encrypted string, and that token is saying that we're asking for demo.read. That's the API call that we're looking for. So inside of our actual API, you can go and secure information. You can kind of configure what information is sent back based on these scopes. So we're saying that we're requesting demo.read. If we were to hit, say, a post endpoint that's supposed to be demo.write, we're not sending that scope along with it, so the request is going to be denied. So you have to kind of say this request that I'm sending to you, this is the scope of that request. So we're saying this is the read scope. So this information we're sending to the right endpoint, we're sending the proper scope that we're looking for. So that middleware that looks for the jot, it'll be sending that information back to the browser as that was requested. So that's all we have for the demo for now. We have so for resources. Again, if you want any of this code, this is all publicly available on GitHub. It's just github.com/jeffstagg/library. It's a repository. It's got the slides. It's got a bit more information inside of the README as far as what to edit and everything, as far as how to run the project, and instructions on getting it set up. If you want any more information on the plugin that we're using, it's from Damien. It's just Angular OAuth OIDC client. And any more information for Azure B2C can be found on the on the Microsoft Azure website. So I know we went over a ton of information. I kind of just dumped it all on you. I try to go as fast as I could to get as much information out as I can. But if you guys have any questions, we can. I'm sure a ton of you have questions, but I kind of just spoke pretty fast there.
Where's the user data stored? Like when you created that user, where was that stored?
So yes, where the user data is stored, that is actually all up on Azure inside of your AD directory. Come into the Azure portal or the application, come into users here. And we see we have username Jeff Stagg at protonmail.com. All this information is all stored under the Azure AD instance for the tenant that you have set.
What if you need other attributes, custom attributes?
As far as like instead of first name, last name, things like that.
Yeah, like I want their phone number. Yeah.
Gotcha. So those can all be set up as well through our application.
Okay.
Actually, as well. That's not with the. So to add custom attributes and policies and things for the actual Azure B2C, whenever you go and you start setting up those the scopes, you can go and kind of add in your own scopes there, and then you kind of have to configure the middleware yourself inside of the API to go and say that they're asking for this particular scope to make it a claim. Say that like we want phone number 2.
Right.
We have one phone number, you want phone number 2. So actually go into the API side, and you allow it as a scope to go through an API. So that's part of where waters get a bit muddier, is that there's API scopes and then there's access scopes. And those are 2 different things set up on Azure B2C. So you actually have to go and add an API scope to go and ask for that, allow your application to gain access through that, through code, then kind of set it up that way, and then it'll set it along through the job.
How is the API validate a token?
I'm sorry, say that again?
How can the API validate a token to make sure that I'm not setting a byte token to the byte end?
Okay, so yes, how does the API go and validate the token? All of this is set up through the middleware. So if we come into this particular function, so this add authentication actually goes through .NET Core's authorization library to go and set up this metadata address. What this does is this will make a call to this configuration endpoint, and it will see things like what the name of the provider is. It will talk directly to Azure B2C and say, this is the string that I'm looking for to say that this was the provider, this was the authority, and these types of things. So what it does is when it creates this JOT, there's 3 parts to a JOT. It's got headers, a payload, and then it's got a signature. That signature at the bottom is encrypted through a specific algorithm that is set up through this middleware, through the actual Microsoft library, and that'll go and it'll make sure that the signatures are valid, that both of them say that I am who I say I am, that it's a valid client. So it checks everything from this application ID to say that this audience has permission to gather, to send and receive tokens, and then the actual middleware will go to that configuration endpoint and make sure all the other things line up for the signature.
For the sign-up attributes specifically, things like surname, is there a way to alias those so you show last name or family name instead of the word surname in your sign-up?
So he asked, whenever you're setting up the policies, to go in, it says like kind of given name, surname, and things like that. He asked if you could alias that. You can. I haven't done that through Azure B2C. you can, but a lot of these are, the way that it works so seamlessly is that these are already provided names inside of the OAuth specification. So it's what you would essentially do is if you want to rename them, it'll take the standard OAuth name and it'll go and rewrite it and say as part of your configuration endpoint that surname really means last name. Things like that. It'll kind of do the mapping that way. Most of that is usually kind of stick through the default names that can go on. Any other questions? Clear as mud? All right, so again, if you guys do have any questions or anything like that, or if you want to check out the source code, I encourage you to go grab the repository and download it and just play with it. It's a lot of the things that you'll learn through making mistakes and going through the actual debugger. But the plugin that I included inside there, and it's on the public repository from Damien. It's great about spitting everything out through the console. Say, like, it'll have headers of what the exact error is. I just threw in a method for the actual API to send a detailed error through the response if it gets an error. So check out that code as well. Build your own custom errors that are coming out, and that'll help you get very, very far along in the process. Just making mistakes, finding out how to fix them that way, kind of going along through there. But once you get the hang of OAuth and OIDC, this is a breeze to start setting up. It just takes a bit of getting used to.
What was that GitHub?
GitHub.com.
You used?
Oh, the library
Yeah.
is found. Come back to slides here. So the Angular plugin right here at github.com/DamienPod. That's Angular OAuth OIDC client. All right, guys.
Can you connect multiple like Azure ADs together through that? Like a company already has their own Azure AD, be connected through there? Or?
Yep. So the question was, can you connect other Azure AD directories? And absolutely. So when you go to set this up, it actually ports your Azure Active Directory to your AD user here. So if you have an AD instance already set up, once you set up B2C, you can use those same logins to go through. You don't need a new registration or anything.
Can you specify which OU you save your users under when you're creating a user in Azure AD with this?
I'm sorry, can you?
So when a user signs up and you get saved into Azure AD, can you specify which organization unit that user gets saved in? Or is it just kind of?
That's a good question. So it will go to, so whenever you go and sign up the B2C tenant, whenever you go and add a user there, it will store it to that directory. To the directory that you have signed up that way. I actually have not tried sending it to another Active Directory, so I'm not 100% if you can do that.
Because like I have external users and internal users. You know, if it's an external user coming from the internet or something like that, I want to save it in my internal users OU instead of my internal users different OU. I want to be able to save it separately. You know, if that's possible.
That's a good question. Unfortunately, I don't know the answer to it. I'm sure it is possible with enough configuring, but I'm sorry, I don't know right off the bat.
Okay.
Any other questions?
Back on your B2C tenant, one of the choices there was user attributes. Is that a space where you can extend the set of properties?
That's a good question. Let's check it out. Sorry, so when I was...
So right up there, third item down.
Good call. I guess that's exactly what it is for that. Cool. Thank you for answering the question, brother.
Question with question.
Yeah. All right, guys. Well, thank you everybody for coming. Unfortunately, I'm out of time. Again, if you have any questions or anything, shoot me an email. Check out my GitHub, like that. I'm glad to help you out.